what we do with so ArtsED New Jersey is a statewide organization that works through a collective impact model, which is one way of saying that we couldn't do what we do, we couldn't accomplish our goals without our partners. And so the partners are throughout the entire education landscape to ensure that there's a healthy arts education ecosystem for students in our state. So I just want to begin with some assumptions and be really upfront that in the arts, there are social and emotional benefits that take place as a result of sustained practice and participation in the artistic process. So this is an infographic from our ArtsED Now campaign. That's New Jersey's statewide campaign that focuses on promoting the value and benefits of arts education. And this particular graphic really does, I think, a nice job of calling out some of the ways that the arts do help us to develop, whether it's through observing and listening, in a visual art or design context, through the critique process and discussion, whether it's performance and reflection or practice and rehearsal. We just know that the arts are a very, very effective way for students to practice and develop social and emotional competencies. So just a quick snapshot. We'll be together in this session for 30 minutes if you're able to stay that long. So we'll look at artistic literacy and fluency together, looking at SEL goals. I'm going to introduce, for some of you, you may be already familiar with the ArtsED and SEL framework. If not, introduce you to that resource, and then we'll just take a look at some examples of what it would look like to utilize that resource in practice. I want to give a shout out. This photograph came about this time last year. I was at one of the teen arts festivals in Middlesex County. The students were chalking the walk, and I couldn't resist taking a photo to really capture that day. It was a beautiful, beautiful spring day. So that's shout out to the teens in Middlesex County for their work on this slide. I'd like to start out just asking each of you to think about a time when you have felt a sense of belonging. And if you're comfortable, select a few words or a word that describes that feeling of belonging and share it here with us in the chat. Just sort of take a pause for some thinking, and in your own time, feel free to drop into the chat a word or a few words that describes that sense of belonging. So this graphic is also, again, from the campaign. It's from the research of Marielle Hardiman, and the study was educating every child in the spirit of inquiry and joy. And it notes, you'll see, that participation in the arts is associated with a whole host of benefits of non-academic skills, such as collaboration, empathy, critical thinking, and that question of belonging. I think very often some of these descriptors, like empathy, go hand in hand with a sense of belonging. And we will explore some of the ways that very intentional social and emotional learning embedded into the visual and performing arts can help students to feel that sense when they are within their educational experiences and developing those really crucial relationships. So let's dig into a little more about artistic literacy and fluency. So on this slide, you see there are a number of different components that make up an arts-rich school or district, including, which arts disciplines are offered, that there is dedicated space and instructional time. The piece that you see, number 9 here, says standards alignment. And in New Jersey, we've worked really hard to ensure that when students are going through sequential arts education in the K-12 experience, that not only is there alignment with standards, but that the social and emotional competencies adopted in our state in 2017 are woven into the learning experiences. So just want to call that out right from the start. And here you see on the left-hand side, the landing page to the New Jersey Arts Standards website. And at the bottom, I'll touch a little bit about this framework in detail, but what you can see that on the landing page of this website is a link to the Arts and SEL framework. And that's how closely we believe that these areas are interconnected. So much so that the link to the framework lives directly on the NJ Arts Standards website. And so before I speak any further on mission, vision, artistic literacy, I want to thank and call out Dr. Bill Tresham for sharing in the chat here. His work in every musical is an experience that he shared with us. That was for the question of where and when maybe have you felt a sense of belonging. So thank you. I want to lift that up. I think that many students today really understand that sense of belonging as being a part of something bigger in collaboration, whether it's through an ensemble, whether it's through putting together, you know, an exhibit at the school or the community, or as you have said, and in this example, every musical in which you've been a part. So thank you for lifting that up. So coming back to the standards alignment, we hope through arts education, K through 12, that students are developing a sense of artistic literacy and fluency. And it's certainly in keeping with the mission of our 2020 standards in visual and performing arts, students are developing creative and critical thinking, social and emotional competencies, and the intellectual and expressive abilities that will allow them to become active, contributing members of our global society. So really just want to call out when we use these phrases, artistic literacy and fluency, that literacy is really speaking about developing the vocabulary, the skill set, and the knowledge of a particular artistic discipline. And fluency is being able to independently apply, you know, that knowledge and those skills in contexts and, you know, towards the goals that students have that are most meaningful to them. So here, and this comes directly from the introduction to the 2020 standards, we can see that there are a number of philosophical foundations and lifelong goals that include the arts as a means to well-being, arts as community engagement, communication, creative personal realization, and of course the arts as culture and history and connection to both our own shared lived experiences, as well as those that we may not be familiar with as a result of our own lived experiences, but it's a window into see other cultures, you know, and to share in the joy and participate in learning from others. So I'll move us into some of the points about social and emotional learning in the context of arts education, and we'll look at that through the lens of social and emotional learning goals. So for example, I want to just kind of pause. I did mention that in my role at ArtsED New Jersey, it's a dual role. We in 2021, so just 2 years ago, launched a national center for social and emotional learning to focus on this intersection and to facilitate embedded, intentional, and sustained application of SEL-informed arts education. So it is at the center where we really do put empowerment in the forefront so that spaces can nurture and sustain like a plant with consistency through routines and not merely through show and tell activities. And on this slide, I want to give a shout out, an enormous shout out to Dr. Ural Lashley, who is our Director of Student Empowerment and also the founder of Drum Power. So the photograph that you see on this slide is taken directly from the work that Dr. Lashley has been invested in for decades, using Drum Power as a way to lift up the concept of student empowerment. And again, on the slide, you see that at the bottom left, it tells you the source of these excerpts. And I just want to make mention at the very end, today, we launched a collection of these Heart of the Arts briefs. So though you'll see a reference to individual briefs throughout this presentation, the collection is now available in its entirety through our website. So I'll be sure to make some time to show you where you might be able to download that collection or any of the briefs as a resource. So I always like to begin by acknowledging that I'll be talking really about the teaching and learning aspect and how the social and emotional learning goals that I'll refer to fall really in this inner circle in the diagram. This is from Castle, and their model acknowledges that curriculum and instruction and the classroom is just one aspect, an important aspect, but one aspect of a broader model. And so I just really like to be very clear that although I'll be speaking about the teaching and learning portion, that there are a whole lot of other factors that are important, and we want to really consider them holistically and not just sort of, in a vacuum, each one of them. So this, many of you may be familiar with. If you're not, it's our useful one-page diagram from the New Jersey Department of Education that calls out the 5 SEL competencies and the 19 subcompetencies that were adopted in August of 2017. And when thinking about how these SEL competencies and subcompetencies really can be most impactful in their implementation in visual and performing arts, we champion a model that is embedded and intentional and sustained. So I want to be a little bit more specific and precise in what that means in the context of our work in the visual and performing arts. So when we're talking about embedded, we're talking about looking for those opportunities, those natural connections where the competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, decision-making can be really woven into the academic content, so that when student artists see themselves reflected in curriculum and scaffolded learning experience in the arts, really it becomes an invitation for them to explore identity and belonging and their own agency in really meaningful, powerful ways. And to be intentional is to think about including the common vocabulary, as well as essential questions and enduring understandings that are going to be leaning into the social and emotional learning competencies, as well as the learning goals within the artistic discipline. So these are some important distinctions. And again, you see in the bottom here the reference to which brief you could read more about. We're going through in a short amount of time, a lot of information. So just recognizing that we won't cover it all, but we don't need to cover it all because there's plenty of time for you to follow up with anything that's made mention here. And you can always feel free to reach out. So coming back to these concepts of identity, belonging, and agency, which are so key, just wanting to make some direct connections between the language in the framework, which includes self-awareness, self-management, those competencies can actually track to the SEL goal of identity, and thinking about relationship skills and social awareness, that bucket of thinking, you know, how our own identity relates and is interrelated with others, and that can track to this concept of belonging, and then thinking about those decision-making skills and how really that is, you know, agency is all about decision-making in action, right? So I'm just calling out the ways that these concepts are related. And I think just, you know, for the sake of, you know, ensuring that we have shared understanding around these concepts, one way to think about it is that the functional and healthy awareness of ourselves is where identity begins, but knowing that part of our identity is also, you know, how we are in relationship with others, and it's that belonging piece. And then, you know, the importance of feeling that we have power, and that students feel that they have power over their own lives, and that is that sense of agency that we hope they're able to, again, exercise and practice through their arts education experiences. So I want to take some time to talk about the ArtsEDNJ SEL framework for those of you who may not already be familiar. The framework is a result actually of work between our organizations. So ArtsED New Jersey and SEL4NJ Jersey had a task force that came together for almost 2 years, over 18 months. And the purpose of that task force was to perform a crosswalk between those 5 SEL competencies and the 4 artistic processes of create, perform, respond, and connect. And as a result of that work from a few dozen folks and many, many months and convenings, what you see on this slide is just a visualization of taking the 11 anchor standards in the visual and performing arts and the subcompetencies in the SEL framework, and beginning to think about where those intersections might lie. And as a result of spending time looking for those natural connections, the arts education and social emotional learning framework was developed. And so the framework, if you were to go to the website, you would see that at each intersection, there are enduring understandings and essential questions that are unique to that intersection. So for example, if you went to the intersection of this artistic process of connect and relationship skills, you're going to see a set of enduring understandings and essential questions that's slightly different from any of the other intersections. So the framework is something to familiarize yourself with over time. If you are here and not in the visual and performing arts, it might be helpful for you to take a look at this model to see how something in a different content area, perhaps science or ELA, or might also think about, you know, sort of relationships and pairing the social emotional learning competencies and that opportunity for growth for students with the specific, you know, enduring understandings and essential questions that are within the content area. So here in visual and performing arts, you know, we have a whole series of essential questions and enduring understandings that are embedded right into our learning standards, but the framework is a way to complement those enduring understandings and essential questions by really centering and placing SEL more in the foreground from the beginning of the planning process. So if you're thinking about designing units or lessons, you can begin working from this group of enduring understandings and essential questions. So a lot of the heavy lifting was already done to help ensure that embedding social and emotional learning into visual and performing arts learning experiences can be done with that degree of intention and can be sustained. So this is the landing page for the Center for Arts Education and Social Emotional Learning. And I just wanted to be able to point this out to you, and also just to show you that if you're looking to dig into the framework, this arrow on the screen here that's outlined in bright yellow, you can't miss it. That is where, if you were on the landing page for the center, you can click out from this part in the navigation bar to the framework. So that's where you'll get to those enduring understandings and essential questions that I just mentioned. So in practice, we have a number of different examples of, modeling what this could look like, but there are so many different ways that we don't want to be prescriptive about it. We just want to make sure that we do show you some examples of how this might look. So here, you can see that this is a lesson outline from second grade theater. And in this lesson, the way that it's shown in the example, you have the performance expectation directly from theater, and at the second grade level. So the visual and performing arts standards are written at, the performance expectations are written at the grade band. So end of second grade, 8th, and then high school has a number of different proficiency levels, but the grade band SEL competencies in this example is relationship skills, specifically utilizing active listening skills. And you can see here the student learning objectives for this include students are learning to employ active listening while they collaborate to visualize scenery pieces for a story drama, or said another way, I can show my classmates that I'm listening to them while we work together to imagine the setting of our story drama. So the assessment is all about observation, active listening, and then the performance task is contributing to the collective envisioning of scenery for the story drama. And here's where, as I mentioned, you see that the enduring understandings from theater are paired with an enduring understanding from the Arts Education and SEL website. And the same is true for the essential question. You have one essential question: what happens when theater artists use their imaginations or their learned theater skills while engaging in creative exploration and inquiry? And you have that paired with the essential question from the framework, which is arts and SEL. How do social skills, social norms, and maintaining healthy relationships influence the creative process? So that's one example. I'll show another that, again, these examples and a much more sort of lengthy context can be found in the heart of the arts briefs. This example was from a early elementary music educator who was utilizing music as a way for students to then engage in a visual art making experience that was going to allow them to express how the emotional component through this music listening experience was felt by each of the students in their classroom, and then to be able to put that onto the page in a way that visualized those feelings. So again, this example can be found in the Heart of the Arts brief in much greater detail. And there's also a great video where the educator recorded the students in the process of doing their drawings. So you can get a sense of how this example, was planned, what it looked like in the classroom. So in addition to thinking about the learning standards, also wanting to think about what is the learning environment and what are some of the ways that student empowerment can really be foregrounded. So thinking about the activities and routines and sort of the shared experiences where students have an opportunity to bring in their own lived experiences, their own cultural identities, so that there's a chance to forge a shared community identity that includes everyone's rich cultural backgrounds. So recognizing that New Jersey is so fortunate to be a diverse state, we want to ensure that when we are planning for impactful implementation in our visual and performing arts as well as in our, just school and community environments, that we are planning to do it in such a way that students are able to lead the work, and that their cultural identities and their lived experiences can really be lifted in the process. So I mentioned that today is really exciting, and part of our SEL Day celebration at ArtsED New Jersey and the Center for Arts Education and Social Emotional Learning was to release this Collection 1 Artistic SEL Foundations, which is just a compendium of all the previous individual briefs that have been published through the center since we launched 2 years ago. So I wanted to make sure that you know that was released today. You can download that. And then also just, if you're in New Jersey, stay connected. We have a number of different offerings through the ArtsED Now campaign that are available to advocate for strong arts programs. And in light of the commitment to social and emotional learning and the ways that arts education, can be really fundamental. We want to make sure that our advocacy muscles around arts education are strong. So I will just pause here. If there are any questions, please feel free to, introduce any thoughts or feelings or questions that you might have. But I want to end with an enormous thank you to everyone who is here and interested in the topic. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your kind words.
And wow, Kira, it is really just so impressive how all of this has happened from a spark at a table at a meeting, right? And this past person, you can see how rich and deep the work has been. And, wow, I think students all over New Jersey just say a huge thank you to all the work you've led with this. It's just amazing.
Thank you. Well, again, I really want to give thanks where it's due, because SEL4NJ Jersey has created the environment where these type of, spontaneous discussions can have a place to, form where ideas can be explored, even if they are not, fully baked yet. But, if we have the ingredients and we're willing to really work together, I think, to the credit of your organization, the flexibility, the camaraderie that's been developed through SEL4NJ really allows for, collaborations like this to even be possible. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And we are a coalition, and we all bring it, we bring each what we can to the table, and it is a pretty marvelous thing that we're all cooking up. So thank you so much for sharing. That's wonderful. And also we should give a huge shout out as well to PSA, who's running all the tech for today as well. So they've been behind the scenes, another wonderful partner, a very active part of SEL4NJ. So with that said, what we're going to do is thank you all for participating, is that we're going to have a 15-minute break, and you'll be able to see some artifacts, have a wiggle, tweet. Remember to tweet. Today's the day to tweet about SEL Day. From all accounts, it's going, great guns out there. So anyway, hope to see you all in a little bit. And thank you. That's great. I encourage everyone to go digging and just discovering on the websites that Kira has shared. So hopefully